Hi guys, it's me, Mindy. I'm just checking in. Today we are celebrating Passover. I know some people kept it yesterday. I'm not real big on the calendar debate. I do the best I can with the information I have. So, from our perspective, Jesus would have kept Passover early with his disciples last night, and then today would be the actual Passover at sundown. And we are also going to be attempting the Feast of Unleavened Bread this year. And one of the things that we decided to do was we're not going to worry about things like baking powder and baking soda because those weren't around. They weren't part of the thing. I'm not serving things like waffles and pancakes and stuff like that. But I'm not going to be worried about things like crackers and things like that. We are going to be eating lots of tortillas and making some tortillas, and there's many recipes online. You can also make like wonton wrappers, and those are really easy. It's kind of a variation of tortilla dough, and they're pretty easy and quick. You just have to factor in rest time. Tortillas are flour, salt, and generally a solid fat, although you can use oil, and I believe cold water. And you mix that up, knead it for a little bit in your mixer if you have one, and then you let it rest for 20 to 30 minutes, and then you portion it out and press it if you have a tortilla press, or roll it out if you don't, and then you cook it in a hot pan with or without oil. And then wontons, it's flour, salt, oil, and warm water, and then you mix that up, knead it, and then you roll it out. You let it rest for 20 to 30 minutes, and then you roll it out thin, let it rest again, and roll it out a second time. Really, the way I like to do it, you portion out your dough, and then you roll it out, and by the time you get to the end of rolling out your portioned pieces, you just go back, add flour, and roll it out a second time. And then if you're going to store them, you need to let them set out and dry and put extra flour on them, and then not dry all the way, but get to where they're not going to get tacky when you put them in a plastic bag. And then make sure they've got a little flour in between them, stack them up, and then wrap them in a paper towel and put them in a plastic bag in your fridge. You don't want condensation to get in there because that'll cause mold to grow. It'll also cause them to stick together. So those are some hints on things you can do to replace the bread in your life. The whole thing about the unleavened bread that we've kind of lost in our perspective is we're talking about a sourdough starter. We're talking that when you make sourdough bread, which I have done, I don't have a sourdough starter currently, is you take bread, flour, or regular flour, and all flour naturally attracts yeast and has yeast in it, and there's yeast in the air. It blows around, it lands on fruit, it especially likes apples and grapes. That's how you make apple cider vinegar and things like that. And so you make a dough ball with just flour and water, and you let it sit uncovered, and then you feed it a little bit every day. Or you take yeast in these modern times that you know from either the head off brewing beer, or various and sundry sources of yeast, and you make a yeasted dough, and then you save part of that, and then you feed it with flour and water every day. And so when they're talking about getting the leaven out of your house, they're talking about cleaning out your bread troughs and cleaning out your sourdough starter. Part of what made the bread rise was that the wood of those troughs would get the yeast ingrained in them, and the yeast would live in those. And so when you kneaded your flour and your water in the troughs, it would naturally get yeast on it. And then it's not rapid rise yeast, guys. It takes up to 8 hours sometimes for the first rising, and sometimes you have to let it rise even up to 2-3 days for it to be ready to bake. And like for a sourdough starter, you're looking at sometimes a week to 10 days before you can actually use that to make bread rise. So it's a long process. Now, Jesus, I believe it's in, I want to say Matthew chapter 16, but I'm not for certain. You may have to Google it. Jesus was talking about the leaven of the Sadducees and the Pharisees, where he says, beware the leaven of the Pharisees. So leaven is not just everyday sin that we all struggle with, that's all around us all the time. But Jesus was focused on false teachings. Now, hey, it's okay to disregard this and add this tradition in and do this and do that. And we've really gotten ourselves buried in leaven these days. And over this Feast of Unleavened Bread, let your prayer be to be purified of false teachings. Let your prayer and your fast be to find out those things that are hidden in your life that you need to get rid of. I mean, there's so many obvious things that are really easy to do, like keeping Sabbath at home, even if you're still part of regular church. Getting the non-food items out of your house, things like that. And I wouldn't even worry so much about whether you're actually eating leavened or unleavened bread this week. I know we're in tough times right now. Pray about it. But the whole focus is to be getting the leaven out of your life and walking out the physical, the leavened bread, and getting that out of your house is just an object lesson. Okay? So pray about what God wants you to do. We're all doing the line by line, precept by precept, a little here and a little there, and little by little. We all have different pieces of the puzzle. And God's going to bring it all together very, very soon. And we need to be prepared for that. I know many of us are waiting and watching tonight because we're seeing signs that there might be an event on a Passover at some point because of the way things went down in Egypt. They ate the meal with their shoes on their feet, their staffs in their hand, and their stuff ready to go. So that is in Exodus chapter 12. And me and my family will also be reading the meal that Jesus had with his disciples. And I believe that is in, let me grab it real quick because we were just there last night. It's in the end of Luke. So it's in Luke in the 20s. And we're going to be reading that in the Last Supper that he had with his disciples. And we are going to be serving grilled meat. We don't have access to lamb. We'll be having a green vegetable of some description, either salad or, I know peas aren't bitter, but that's what I have in my freezer right now. And I'll be making unleavened bread, and we will be serving wine. And all of the wine I have is white wine. So just, a spoonful or two. And we'll be doing the bread and the wine in the Lord's Supper. So it doesn't have to be complicated. God's not looking for complicated rituals. He's looking for pureness of heart and people attempting to remember his holy days, to keep his Sabbaths holy, to keep his word holy, to keep his commandments in their hearts and in their minds, to direct their thoughts and their steps. So don't worry about the complications, guys. And I also want you to know that for me, in my life personally, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories going on out there. I know there's a lot of fear. Pray for the shalom, the peace of God to be with you. I've prayed and I've fasted when this whole lockdown thing first started. And I fasted for 3 or 4 days. And guys, I have to eat a little bit. I don't eat a lot when I fast, but I do have to eat. I have blood sugar issues. So I was, eating like half a sandwich, 2 or 3 times a day just to make sure my blood sugar didn't crash. But praying through that, and the message I got was to stay the course, which for me and my family means making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do. And I didn't get any message to prepare to leave or prepare for any major craziness, just to keep on doing what we're doing. And, I don't know what Yah would have for you in your lives, but fear is one of those things that they use to control people. And mass emotion is often used to feed bad spiritual entities. So don't let that fear consume you. Don't believe everything on the national media. Politicians are often liars. I know a lot of people on a lot of channels that I follow for information. A lot of them are freaking out, and I believe they've been allowed to operate because they can make people that are on the other side of the spectrum, that are in the quote truth community, be fearful. And I think we need to spread love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control right now. You'll be known by your fruits. In all of that, fear is not one of those fruits. Okay? You can be prepared for many different things, but being spiritually prepared is probably the most important thing for you to do, because Yah fed the Israelites, or the Hebrews, in the desert. He fed and he watered them. God's word is supposed to be our bread of life. Okay? Jesus is offering us the living water. If he can do those things for eternity, he can provide food for us now. You can do simple things just to help take up your time. If you're, sorry, my nose is running a little bit. Start a garden. Pray over your garden. We're having to move, so I'm praying over my garden now. Take this extra time with your kids. All of my kids, we've had dinner together every single night, almost. And it's been amazing. We also have a friend staying with us right now, because he was living with his grandparents, and he's in food service, so he still has to work. So we've been blessed with an opportunity to add another person temporarily to our family. And there's just been a lot of blessings. A lot of idols have been taken out of our lives. We can't worship the movie stars in their movie theaters and their holy temples. We can't go to the doctor and go to the priest of the medical religion. And guys, I'm not against doctors. My sister's a doctor. My oldest daughter wants to be a physician. I'm okay with that as long as you don't get sucked into the religious part of what a lot of doctors do, okay? So take that with a grain of salt. We can't worship the educational system. I've not kneeled at that altar for a long time. And, we are still kind of worshiping the government a little bit because we're tuned in to CNN and all of that, watching all of Trump's stuff. So guys, be prepared spiritually. Focus on that. But don't freak out. I have a feeling that the powers that be are going to let things return back to normal for at least a little bit. So don't get lulled into a sense of complacency again. But be hopeful. Either way, God's going to provide. It's in His control. He's allowed this timing for a reason. Celebrate Passover to the best of your ability. Keep the Lord's Supper to the best of your ability, even if it's with a saltine cracker and a glass of water. All of you should have your scriptures out there. If you're watching this, you can get your scriptures on Google, even if you don't have a Bible with you. So, take it easy. Be peaceful. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May He turn His face towards you. May He shine His face upon you. May you be blessed. Much love and many blessings out there to you. I hope this finds you well. Bye-bye.